all that alone, that emotional roller coaster. And
Hmm.
because of that emotional roller coaster, the feeling of not being in control with your own life. Because all of a sudden you're looking in a mirror, who is this? Like, who is
Hmm.
this monster I'm becoming?
Yeah.
At least that's what I was talking uh in my head to myself about.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't recognize myself in the mirror
Mm.
anymore. And where did the confident woman go?
Join us at the inaugural Ascend Summit, where empowerment and healing become part of your new reality. Presented by You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, this summit is your gateway to growth, connection, and discovering your true potential. And it's all happening June 28th and 29th in Dallas, Texas. Don't miss your chance to be a part of something life-changing. Early bird tickets are on sale now. Secure your spot today by going to ascend.youarenotyourtrauma.com.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who have experienced life's most challenging moments. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. It's here in this space that we peel back the layers of trauma, not just to expose it, but to understand and overcome it. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. Now, today's episode is Emotional Storms Within, navigating the intense feelings and mood swings post trauma. Now, this episode focuses on the hectic journey of emotional healing. It's about the raw, sometimes chaotic feelings that surge as we find our way back to peace and balance. And to guide us through this journey, we have a very, very special guest, a soul powered executive coach known for her transformative work in helping leaders shift from fear to soul power. Her coaching paves the way for achieving true wealth, creativity, and happiness, all while staying true to oneself without compromise. So, our guest today is Tess Vergara. Welcome to the show, Tess.
I'm so glad you're here. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. I am so excited for our conversation today. So, Tess, could you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, I was a financial executive before in my past life, had a burnout, depression, exactly what you're talking about, the trauma. And that whole dark night of the soul is what pushed me to the other side of my brain into the wholeness. I didn't know that there was more
Mm.
to me back then. And now I am guiding executives and business owners and change makers to really lead the path that they came here to do and contribute to the earth.
Wow.
And yeah, to do good work. And it's the unique soul power gifts. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to share about my work.
Wonderful. I'm very excited to learn more about you and what you do. But before we do, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to jump right into our discussion. We will be right back.
Imagine having resources at your fingertips that support you through every step of your healing journey. That's exactly what you'll get with the You Are Not Your Trauma app. Access guided meditations to find your peace, read inspiring stories that resonate with your experiences, and join a community that truly understands. But that's not all. Dive into the Healing Chronicles and participate in community challenges. It's more than an app. It's a companion on your journey of self-discovery and healing. Download the You Are Not Your Trauma app today and join a community where your story matters and your healing journey is honored. Find us on the App Store and Google Play Store. Your journey to healing starts now.
Okay, and we are back. Now, today we're exploring the emotional storms within and how to navigate those intense feelings and mood swings that follow trauma. Now, Tess is here to share her expertise on transforming these challenging emotions into a source of strength and empowerment. So, okay, Tess, let's just jump right in, right? So, when someone experiences a trauma, it can really, really turn their world upside down. Now, can you talk to us about how this impacts them emotionally? And I'm talking specifically, I'm curious about the mood swings and intense feelings that follow and how these emotional moments can alter the way they view their own worth and deservingness.
Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, that alone, that emotional roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that emotional roller coaster, the feeling of not being in control with your own life. Because all of a sudden you're looking in a mirror, who is this? Like, who is
Mm-hmm.
this monster I'm becoming?
Yeah.
At least that's what I was talking uh in my head to myself
Yeah.
about. Like, I didn't recognize myself in the mirror
Mm.
anymore, and where did the confident woman go? And so that alone is traumatic. That's
Yeah.
that in itself is traumatic, because you feel this feeling of you're separating from who you knew you were
Mm-hmm.
into this someone that you've been so afraid people will know about. And now it's
Mm.
here. You're coming face to face with the demons, with whatever it is that you were trying not to show the world.
Right.
Here it is. And it's coming up, and and you can control it, and you can't push it down anymore. It's like a balloon. You push it down under the water, it just keeps popping up, and you feel out of control. And the more you feel out of control, the more you feel powerless to change things, and it ruins your confidence, it ruins your self-esteem. And
Yeah.
in my case, in the past, I didn't want to be here anymore. If I wasn't going to be a functioning member of the society, why be here? That was my thought
Wow.
process. And I didn't realize that I was traumatized
Wow.
until I started volunteering for mental crisis. So if I volunteered for a mental crisis because I was going through some depression
Mm-hmm.
myself. And what's the best way to get out of depression? To contribute,
Busy.
right? To
Yeah.
volunteer,
Yeah.
to make yourself useful. And so that was what I was doing before. And then I realized that if you have unprocessed grief, and grief can be a baby or a job or someone you love or something,
Yes.
it's grief, and it has to be processed in the same way. But nobody talks about trauma. Nobody talks about that there's a way to process trauma. And in fact, there were a lot of authors, back when I started coaching, there were a lot of authors. Oh, you should write a book. You should write a book. What am I going to write about? I did not get abused. I did not get slapped around.
Yeah.
There was nothing for me to write about. I was sober my whole life.
You didn't feel like you fit the bill
No,
that most trauma that society says trauma looks like, right?
yeah. So the unawareness that you had some hidden trauma that's
Mm.
waiting to be resolved, I didn't know that that was part of my process. And so what I realized was I was reading a book, and let's say, for example, on the dinner table, right? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
your culture, but my culture is you have to finish your food,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So Harriet, finish
That's
your
how I was raised.
and if you don't finish your food, You stay there, you don't get an ice cream, you don't get dessert.
Yeah.
And little did I know that that alone was traumatizing for a growing child. And so when I put all those pieces together, I realized, oh my God, that's why all this resentment kept
Mm,
piling on until all of a sudden I had to stop pleasing people because no matter what I
yeah.
do, they don't see me anyway. And that,
Mm,
yeah, they don't
wow.
see me anyway. And the more I people please, the more I've lost boundaries. I
Mm-hmm.
worked from home and I brought my children. I was a single mom and I brought my children to work. I didn't have any boundary because that was all I ever did was please
Wow.
other people and work what is convenient for them and
Yeah.
sacrifice my well-being. And here's the thing, I didn't know I was sacrificing my well-being. But these are the expressions of trauma that we are
Mm-hmm.
manifesting. The self-abandonment, the
Mm,
messaging, the hidden message in the subconscious that you are not worth it. The neglect from being a child of an alcoholic. I thought they were loving parents,
mm-hmm.
but because I was a child of an alcoholic, I didn't know that there was neglect there in the psyche
Wow.
that I kept picking up, and became the lens from which I saw life.
Wow. Wow. So Tess, you said something a little bit earlier. I want to circle back to. You said, where did that confident woman go?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got there. Let's talk about how you got to the place where you started questioning where that confident woman went.
Hmm. Yeah, because all of a sudden I was so needy. I
Mm,
was so needy. I needed people's attention. I needed people's approval. Hey, I'm doing this party for my kids. Can you be, instead of being assertive of
mm-hmm.
parties at 8 o'clock, be there, y'all. No, I had to make it work for everyone's schedule.
Mm. That had to be
And
difficult.
yeah, but I became really good at it. But then where did that confident woman go? The single mom who raised her kids
Mm-hmm.
solo without a dime from their father, who raised her children in a foreign country without a job, without friends, without family, and deportable. So this woman was so confident and just knew it. And then when it started, the like I said, the build up of resentment that
Mm-hmm.
says
Mm-hmm.
no one values me, when that started being more than the false bravado
Mm-hmm.
of I'm an
Mm-hmm.
accountant, you know, I'm the one who prints your check, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the
That's
one who
important.
approves it. I'm also the HR. I'm all in one. So the chip on the shoulder, that's not confidence, it's false bravado.
Yeah,
If you take
understood.
away the position, the role, I had nothing to show for. And so this was when I asked myself, where did that confidence go? Where did that confident woman go? Because I
Mm,
turned into a very needy, insecure woman. And that was
mm.
not sexy at all. Oof.
So let me ask, so what kind of, when we're thinking about, and you and I kind of talked about this a little bit before we started, is that, there are some traits, some things, some feelings, emotions that are connected to us that we don't realize as trauma. So you mentioned that you didn't realize that some of the things that you experienced in childhood, some of the self-abandonment, the oh goodness, I didn't write it down, but the neglect, that's what it was.
Neglect.
The
Mhm.
neglect. So when you started realizing all of this, someone experiences all these things and all these things start to come up, how did that affect your mood?
how did it not affect my mood? It was everything. It became my whole world. I became this, not just angry, I was lashing out. I was
Mm.
lashing out. I told my boss to F off. She was micromanaging me. hmm She was micromanaging me, and I couldn't breathe anymore. And then talking about grief, this person replaced my boss, and
Mm-hmm.
so he died, and because
Oh
I was the
my.
superwoman people pleaser, I was so resentful of the fact, and I didn't know why I was resentful.
Mm-hmm.
But the obvious one to me was the micromanaging, because she
Mm.
was new, and I couldn't, I couldn't handle that, because I'm a
Right.
free spirit. I do my job well in the
Mm-hmm.
freedom and creativity that I'm born with. And then here's a micromanager.
Didn't
Doesn't
work for
work
you.
very well.
I can
Mm-mm.
see that.
And then I get bitter because, and this is trauma too. All of a sudden, the auditor came to the office.
Mm-hmm.
So the executive director passed away.
Mm-hmm.
The auditor came to the office, and I saw him in the hallway, and I said, "Hey, we have a meeting that I forgot about. I didn't get the memo. Oh, the board of directors invited me to look into your credentials." And
Oh,
I felt a knife. And
oh
yeah,
my.
not
Wow.
not a good leadership strategy.
Oh
And
my.
and then I felt, no one appreciates me. So the
Mm-hmm.
self-pity came in. So with
Yeah.
self-pity, with feelings of martyrdom, I gave everything to this company. I left my children alone so I could
Mm-hmm.
do this work. And so,
Yeah.
and because I was feeling so low, the anger is coming up because I felt nothing. So the anger is all about significance. It's my ego wanting to make something mean about myself. So it's giving
Right.
me back some energy. But then it started, yeah, and I was not, uh, I was not proud of that moment, but that's how low I went with emotional roller coaster, with the
Mm-hmm.
emotional storm within. And everyone said to go, see a shrink or something. And there was shame about going to a psychiatrist or a shrink. At least in my family, the people I
Yeah.
know who went just numbed themselves in medication. And so
Mm.
that was not something I would want on my resume either. So there was a lot of shame and confusion about mental health back then. This was
Mm-hmm.
many years ago, obviously. And so yeah, that rage, when it becomes out of control, can really take over your life. And then the
Yes.
shame underneath that, oh my God. And the thing is, too, because people knew me as go-getter, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna figure it out, Tess. You're gonna
Mm.
figure it out. When I was already crying out for help.
And
Again,
so
no
there was
one
a lack of
saw.
support.
Yes. So it was everything all piled up all at the same time. And I didn't understand it. So like I said, it was the fact that you are experiencing the effect of the trauma is in itself traumatizing.
Right. Absolutely. Now, Tess, can you share some insights into the connection between emotional healing from trauma and the journey towards feeling whole again?
Yes, that's a beautiful thing. And for me, the process was the four pillars, I call it. It's your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, and spiritual well-being. So some people would have an illness, cancer, and then take their power back, right? But
Mm-hmm.
my journey was through mental, taking back my mind first, because that was
Mm.
what was creating and recreating the trauma. So I was myself traumatizing myself because that was the only way I knew how to relate to myself. The voices that I heard, the abuse that I witnessed, I became my own abuser. And
Wow.
when I realized that my own thoughts, I had the power to take back my thoughts and master my own mind, that was, and again, this was my process. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the left brain people will understand this, a lot of the thinkers and over analytical
Mm-hmm.
overthinkers, they would really resonate with this, is taking back control of your mind and getting it to a place where it's not stirring up stories, creating stories over exaggerating what would happen in the future when it hasn't even happened yet.
Yes.
And so from there, once you get to that ability to calm your own thoughts, then the emotions, all the pieces that we stored underneath the bed or underneath the rug, they
Mm.
will all come and want peace and want to return to wholeness. So it's like a child, inner child healing. It's like
Yes.
the part of us that got stunted, the part of us that says it's not safe to come out, so just hide, don't ever show
Yeah.
your face to anyone.
For
That
safety
part that
reasons.
never,
Yeah.
that part that never grew up, or don't even sing in public, people are gonna think you're crazy if you're dancing in the street. I got pinched but many times by my own father. God bless him. Right? If I do this and dance crazy in the
Mm-hmm.
street, because it's gonna give the wrong message to people. People are gonna
Mm.
think I'm crazy. People are gonna
Yeah.
think that they're not good parents, or people
Yeah.
are gonna take advantage of me. So for safety reason, but then there's that part of me that just wants to have fun and explore life that wants to come back. And so all the emotions that's hidden and repressed and suppressed by that part of me, and we're just talking one part here, and there's many of that
Yeah.
that wants to come out and play and be back, come back to the wholeness. So that's part of the journey too.
Wow. Thank you. I like that. Thank you for sharing your 4 pillars. Um, so Tess, I'd love to hear about some specific tools or approaches you've seen work wonders for people trying to rebuild their self-worth as they heal. What's in your
Mhm.
toolbox for helping folks on that path?
Yes. One of my favorites, a lot, there's a whole lot. But one of the things that is in my toolbox is the disc assessment, the numerology, because these are things that give us glimpses of our unexpressed part of ourselves, meaning they're hidden, they're dormant. But those are just one tool. But the other one that I really like and would like to talk about are the chakras, the 7 energy centers in the body.
Okay.
And so along the spines, kind of like the nerve here affects the nerve there. So it's all
Yeah.
interconnected, right? It's like an electric
Yep.
thing. So kind of like the 7 chakras, it's like imagine like a water hose. If there's a hole in the hose, how strong is the water when you're gardening, when you're watering the garden, right?
Not
It's
100%.
like trickle. Yeah, not 100%. And if it's kinked, if the cat is stepping on it, is it flowing?
Nope,
No.
it's stopped.
Yep, it's a stop. So the same thing with our energy, because our energy, we can manifest it by speaking, by
Hmm.
seeing into our intuition, by knowing that we are safe. So the energy centers in our body, when one of them is blocked, can uh, did you ever feel before you became a podcaster that you had to really work on speaking your truth and really practice it and hone it?
Yes,
Because
I
like I
did.
told you,
I
yeah, I got
did.
pinched before. Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the throat chakra right there. And then our intuition is our third eye. The crown is our connection with wisdom. Call it the divine, God, universe, or higher spirit, right? So the crown chakra on the top of the head, third eye, throat chakra, the heart chakra. Sometimes when this is full of grief and unresolved
Mm,
resentment, this can block us from fully loving. And I'm not
wow.
talking about loving somebody, but being the part of us that is love. All we ever want is to be this expression of love. But if we restrict ourselves from fully loving,
Wow.
right? Where do we
Right.
go? We
Yeah.
close ourselves up, and then we
Yep.
again we're traumatizing ourselves without knowing that we are the one perpetuating it. Then the solar plexus, the sacral chakra, and the root chakra.
Wow. That's very interesting. I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'd love to share information about it if that's something it's something that I'm working on now, actually,
Okay. Wonderful.
discovering the chakras. Yeah.
Now, addressing what comes after the storm, those emotional pieces from trauma, right? It seems crucial for tapping into a deeper part of ourselves, our souls, maybe. How do you see this process unfolding, and what does it bring to the surface for those you've worked with or yourself?
It's unfortunate that we wait until we feel really powerless until we take back control
Mm,
of our life and our creation. And that's for me too. If I didn't
yeah.
feel almost suicidal, I wouldn't have gone this route. I would have been happy being an accountant and giving myself away,
Oh, that's so
right? But
true.
sometimes we, our higher self, our future self, whatever you call it, we betray our own self, the part that is manifesting in a
Hmm.
limited way on earth.
Hmm.
We betray because that's not the path that we signed up for.
Wow.
We're meant to be bigger.
It's true.
And it's not just ambition. There's this longing, there's this yearning for something more, but society says be content or be
Mm,
this. But no, I'm being drawn here. So how do you
yeah.
reconcile that, right? So there's a lot of patience with yourself will need to go in place, a
Yeah.
lot of patience, a lot of permission, a lot of self-love, everything that you gave to other people just to gain their love and affection, you need to give it back to yourself now.
That's so
And
true.
right. Yeah.
You know,
And
I
it's
love
not
that
an
you said,
easy
oh, I'm sorry.
process. Go
No,
ahead.
it is
Go
not an
ahead.
easy process. I was just going to say, I really love what you said is that, because it's so true, is that we wait until we're powerless. We
Mhm.
wait until we were powerless, until we are stuck. Like we don't know what else to do before we start searching for some sort of solution, some sort of answer that's already within us. We just haven't been able to uncover it yet. Why do you think that
Yeah.
is?
Because our we are wired for security. We are wired for sameness. We are wired for comfort, except our spirit
Ooh,
doesn't live in
yeah,
comfort.
that is true.
And then our mind is wired to protect us from danger. And anything new, anything that's unknown is danger.
Yeah,
So the mind
those
actually
alerts
works
start going
against
off.
our spirit.
Yeah, those alerts start going off like, yeah, I get you. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So, and sometimes the really divine intervention has to whack you in the head and say, you
Hmm.
are not listening to your own truth.
Yep, that's true. Because sometimes it's staring us right in the face and we just don't see it. It comes to us. Um, I was actually just telling my mom just the other day is that God put something into my spirit a year ago. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't know what to do with that. And now here
Yeah.
it is, not quite a year, I guess. Here it is, like 10 months, 11 months later. And I'm like, oh, dang, I should have done that. Let me go ahead and do it now because, I'm trying to get it together. But it's like, things are coming to you. And even the problem is, I think a lot of times we're looking for like how to rationalize it. Like, this doesn't make sense. So, we're just going to move that out of the way because, like you mentioned, we are wired for security and for comfort. So, and a lot of times those things those things, the places that we never saw ourselves, because let me tell you, I never saw myself hosting a podcast. Okay. Definitely didn't see myself hosting one to talk about something that was so traumatic for me. And then focusing, in on that subject so much. This is not what I saw. But it was already there, just as you mentioned. So I just really wanted to kind of point that out for any of our listeners who are out there who, no one, I want them to know you don't have to get to that powerless place. But if we start listening to ourselves, listening to what is coming up within us or being put into our spirit, being, in your prayers, or however it's coming to you, because I know it comes to all of us in different ways. But if we pay attention, it's so important to do that because wherever we're supposed to go, that purpose that we were created for, as you mentioned earlier, it's already there. Everything is already laid out, but we tend to miss it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Tess, you may agree that it's not uncommon to hear about people struggling to believe that they deserve happiness or fulfillment after what they've been through. And
Yeah.
that's anything in life. Any bad experience. I won't even just limit that to trauma. But what hurdles do they usually encounter and what wisdom can you share about moving past these feelings?
So I have a client who is struggling with that, and
Hmm.
she's brought her business to tremendous success. But deep inside, she doesn't feel she's worthy. She doesn't feel
Mm,
she deserves happiness. And remember what I said earlier, we are love. So her
yeah.
expression of love got focused on all her energy, got focused on building that business because that
Mm,
became her expression. But then
mm,
now is the time because she also confided in me that she wants to just disappear.
mm,
So on the one hand, she's focused on this, but whenever something happens that disrupts her focus and attention, she goes into self-pity. She goes
yeah.
in because, you know, she's had tremendous trauma, gang raped, disowned by her own mother, um, so many trauma that everything, and the voice in her head is of her mother saying that because of you, I'm not successful. Because of you, I
Mm,
had to quit this. Because of you. And so you are the reason I'm not successful. So with that filter going through in her mind,
yeah.
and yet at the same time, she's got nothing to lose. So why not
Yeah.
just give herself to something worthwhile to her? But but you see the disconnect.
Yeah.
She's this
Absolutely.
magnificent creator, and yet looking for other things to fill her up. And she
Yeah.
can see the danger that she's not going to be that business that she takes care of is not going to be there. And she built it so big that now she has employees and children of those employees that now she can't
Wow.
afford to disappear. So
Mm,
she's in a place of conflict within herself that she better get it together. So isn't it amazing, right? So
yeah.
now that
Yeah.
is the work that we're doing. How do you do that? And going back to the four pillars. So we're working on
Yeah.
first stabilizing the mind, making it a safe place for the emotions to come up. When the emotions
Yes.
come up, then they can heal because now we don't have a judgmental mind that says you better kill yourself
Absolutely.
because you're worth nothing, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
once you have those stabilized, then you can bring that stability into to the world, and everyone around you is not, oh my God, walking on eggshells because of all the
Mm-hmm.
emotional storms we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? They love you and support you, but then when you, okay, I'm busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're on
Yeah.
your own, right? And that
Right.
you're on your own with your baggage, that can be so isolating and so lonely.
Yes.
Whew. So, gotta look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. And like you said earlier, it doesn't have to be that way, but there is always a time when you do. You do
Right.
have to look at yourself, and this is what I'm creating by staying in trauma, by protecting by nurturing the trauma.
Right.
And what I mean by that is you're holding on to the trauma instead of letting it go.
Yeah. I used to call it going into my rabbit hole
Hmm. Hmm.
because for me, I could link everything back to the trauma. Like it could be something that had nothing to do with it, but it was like, okay, well, this never would have happened if I would have done this differently, and then this and this, and then I would just go right on down that rabbit hole. And looking back, I couldn't see it then, but looking back, it kept me like quicksand, just stuck right in there. If things were going good, and you mentioned, and that's what actually made me think about it. You said that, things when things are going good, you know, they're great, but when things are not going good, then, she's going into this cycle of the things her mother said, and that was kind of what I experienced. I would just everything for me was linked until I could get my mind around, for one, forgiving letting go of what I shouldn't have been carrying in the first place, forgiving myself for carrying what I shouldn't have been carried in the first place, but then getting my mind around who I truly was and learning how to, as you mentioned, process things as they came up, but from a judgmental place. So I can completely relate to that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so,
Now,
so no matter where you are in this journey called life, if you're not there yet and you're listening, but you're picking up wisdom here,
yes.
and it's there. The subconscious is so powerful and it holds a lot of
Mhm.
information. And then you're
Yes.
gonna wonder why one day, where did I learn how to do that? It's
Mhm.
because you're listening. You're listening
Because you're
here.
listening, tuning in.
You're listening to Harriet.
Good thing you're listening, listening to all the good advice Tess is giving us. Now, Tess, we live in a world where everyone has an opinion,
Mm,
especially about things that they may not fully understand, like the
mhm.
aftermath of trauma. How do societal views impact the healing process, particularly regarding self-worth? And then what strategies would you suggest for breaking free from those pressures, those societal pressures?
Yeah, the strategies are different for each person. And the society too is like, oh, don't trigger someone, and
Mm,
I'm the type of coach who will put the mirror in front of you. And I will say it nicely, but I will trigger the heck out of you. Because triggers are our friend, you know.
right.
A lot of people are afraid to say the right things in front of people. Just be fair. And whatever you say, whether it's a gift of contrast you're giving them or a warning message, right? So my mother loved me through gift of contrast. I learned to love myself by not doing the things that she did, like
Mm,
allowing abuse, like allowing someone to slap her around, like allowing over medication. So all those things while growing up, those are the things that I learned not to do. But then there's also the remnants of trauma. Just by observing it, I was also copying subconsciously. So there's that too, that had to come up. And so anyway, um, so triggers are our friend. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. You think by saving someone the words that they needed to hear because it's you think or society tells you it's unkind, actually you're doing a disservice
Mm,
by looking at that person as if she's a victim or powerless.
right.
So what happens then if we're tiptoeing around each other and never
Mm-hmm.
ever saying what's true, and we're just really saying that you deserve there in the hell that you created for yourself.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, if you are coming from love, pure love, how can you mess it up?
It's true.
So don't listen to what society tells you you should do. Use your own guidance, use your own spirit, use what is pure and true to you, and function from there. Don't function from suppression and depression and repression and all that. Otherwise, we're just repeating
Yeah.
the enslavement. And like I said earlier, I didn't know that it was me traumatizing myself because I was talking to myself the way I learned others treat each other badly.
Right. So I want to circle back to one thing that you mentioned in the thought pattern of how societal views impacts the healing process. You mentioned that you know some people would say go to a shrink, but you know that wasn't what you were accustomed to. How did something like that impact one's healing? Like getting the help that they may actually need, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a psychiatrist, whatever the method is. But how would you say from your experience that that impacts healing?
You need to go to someone you trust.
Mm-hmm.
So God sent me a priest in my deepest, darkest day. And I was like, oh, there's a, all of a sudden, because, right before that moment, I told God, take this pain away or take away my life.
Mm.
An hour later, there's a priest. And I'm not saying go to a priest.
Right, right, right.
I'm saying go to what is resonating with you right at the moment. So I
Right.
already have resistance to shrink. Why? Because I see members of my family taking medication and not getting
Mm-hmm.
better. They're just numbing themselves. So I had that bias. And for some people, it's very helpful. For myself, it looked it looked like codependency. It looked like dysfunction.
Right.
And if you trace my past, you can see why I am what I am right now because of all those traumatic experiences that contributed
Right.
to the wisdom I'm sharing now. So what I'm saying is the priest at that moment was God's saving grace for me. That might not be for you. It might be those things from the Chinese restaurant, the fortune cookie,
Fortune
a
cookies.
little a little thing that it sparks light in you. And then from that moment, you are guided to a yoga or meditation. You are guided to a really, really good counselor who is more integrative, like what we're talking about. I'm not the only coach who
Right.
does integrative work. You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
in fact, when I went to do my training with Tony Robbins, there were already counselors there. And I'm like, oh my God, these people have PhDs and MBAs, and I'm nobody. I'm just an accountant, and they're my classmates, right? So there are a lot of help out there who really have your interest at heart, but we function from safety first and from
Yeah.
resonance. So the man of cloth was familiar to me at that time.
Right.
It was very comforting. It was a safe space. And a lot of people will tell me right now that Tess, religion, dogmatic, blah, 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 right? You're going to have to come full circle with everything that you've judged also. Because if you have
Absolutely.
judgment on something, that's going to come back and bite you in the
Yep.
behind too.
Absolutely.
So there's
So
integrative process. Yeah.
yeah. So
And
the
I'm
idea
not
though is
saying
either,
no.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not saying no, don't take this, but that was my thinking process. For some people, that's their saving grace, but for
Yeah.
you, trust you, be you.
So the idea though is despite society saying, society saying, showing you that this may not be a good method, it's best to just find some support, some help, but just what
Mhm.
works for you.
Yes. Yes.
That makes complete sense. Thank you.
Mhm.
Tess, thank you so much. I mean, this has been so insightful. I really enjoy our conversation. I have lots of notes here. um, but we're going to take a quick pause, another quick commercial break. When we return, we're going to uh, wrap up this conversation, and Tess is going to provide us with her final thoughts. So we'll be right back.
Want a chance to win exclusive You Are Not Your Trauma merch? Here's how. Leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform and share your thoughts with us. It helps us reach more listeners who may also be seeking healing and growth. Once you left your feedback, visit feedback.youarenotyourtrauma.com to let us know you've entered by entering your info and the word feedback in the message section. You could be a lucky winner. Now stay tuned for today's inspiring episode, and thank you for being a part of the You Are Not Your Trauma community.
Okay, we are back. Now, we have spent this episode just discussing how we can transform our emotional storms into pillars of strength. And Tess talked about her 4 pillars of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So we really appreciate you, Tess. I can't tell you how thankful I am that you have joined me to share all of this information. Now, can you share any final thoughts with our listeners?
Yes, I know some of the things I've already said can be controversial because
Okay.
that's all we knew, right? That's all we've
Right.
been told. So coming
Absolutely.
from a soul powered perspective, it's about trusting yourself. It's about trusting your own guidance.
Mhm.
And you can't come to the place of peace and trust within yourself if your mind is overactive, if your
Mm,
emotions are out of control, if physically you don't feel equipped to take care of yourself physically, right? You don't have the skills, you don't have the coping skills and all that. And then what are we doing, right? As a society, we're supposed to do this and uh,
mhm.
go on Instagram and watch TV and that, and then we totally disconnect from our own spirit. And I'm not talking
Yeah.
religiosity here, I'm not talking religion, although I mentioned the priest, but that was my process, right?
Right.
And that was
Right.
just a small part of my process. But the part of you that already knows the truth of who you are, it's there. It's that longing. It's the
Mhm.
part of you that is anguished, the part of you that knows that you are meant to be more. It's there. Don't forget that part and connect with that part as you also connect with your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So what I'm gonna do, Harriet, I hope this is okay, is I'm going to send you a link to the 7 chakras that I talk about, the
Okay.
chakra discovery guide. I actually just finished the PDF last night. So yeah, I'd be
Okay.
happy to share it with the listeners who ask for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for this conversation. So for our listeners that are out there, as always, I want you to join in on the conversation. I want you to think about, how have you navigated your emotional storms to find calm and strength? Share your story with us on social media using hashtag emotional storms, and be sure to tag You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can do that on Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram. Your story could offer hope for someone in the midst of their own storm. Now, as we wrap up today's conversation, I want to leave you all with this thought. In the heart of the storm lies the strength to calm the seas. Your emotions, no matter how hectic, hold the power to redefine your journey towards healing. Now, for everyone, again, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. Your presence is a vital part of this collective journey. Now, if you found today's episode helpful, please don't forget to share it with someone who can benefit from the information that Tess has shared with us tonight. Also, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. You can check out the website, www.youarenotyourtrauma.com, to leave feedback, request to be a guest on the show, subscribe to the show, get information on show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. Also, don't forget to download the new You Are Not Your Trauma app for more resources and community support. It is a fantastic tool to accompany you on your healing journey. It is available in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Now, if you need additional resources to aid you on your journey of healing and self-discovery, I encourage you to download the You Are Not Your Trauma Resource Guide. It is available in the app or by going to resourceguide.youarenotyourtrauma.com. Now, until next time, take care of yourselves and never forget, the power to heal, it lies already inside of you. Bye-bye.